Welcome to I Am Pausing. This is a space for conversations about pausing, about well-being and staying well in modern work and life. And I'm so excited to have our guest today on the show, Dave Gibson. Dave and I met recently through the wellbeing space. And what I love about Dave is that he is an expert in sleep, but he looks holistically at not just sleep, but the intersection between sleep and stress and the body overall. So really holistic view and super impressive. Dave's been on TV, on radio. You might have seen his work with Strictly Come Dancing. And not only that, but he's also supported large organizations in helping their employees sleep better, reduce stress, like Starbucks and IBM. So super excited to have you on the show today, Dave. Welcome.
Thank you. What an introduction. Thank you.
Yes. So to start off with, tell me about your work, the sleep site. What sparked this mission and around sleep and well-being?
I sort of started off running away from advertising. I'd had enough of the stress of advertising about, 30 years ago. I had a career in advertising that was sort of, it promoted me out of my comfort zone in terms of management of stress. And I used to use alcohol to get to sleep and caffeine to wake up. So I was very much sort of in the fast zone and really struggling to keep work-life balance. Sold my house, retrained as an osteopath, and within a few years started to realize that a lot of my clients were suffering from lack of sleep more than bad backs, and started to research it, started to blog about it, trained in stress management. So bit by bit, getting more of a knowledge about how sleep impacts everything. And then started off the sleep site really just to get some information out there. It was well before Matthew Walker did his sort of iconic Why We Sleep. And I sort of realized then that people were literally cutting their sleep short.
Yeah. What an interesting journey. How did you why was this such a kind of interesting topic for you personally?
I've always found it hard to get to sleep. I have a dad who was able to sleep anywhere, any place, any time, and a mum who's historically a poor sleeper, and we inherit one or other of our parents' sleep genes. So, my sleep was very much something that I had to get right myself. So I sort of looked at all the sleep hygiene tips that I recommended and really had to go through them one-on-one. So, and I was well aware of how my mental health was suffering because I wasn't sleeping well enough, being short fused, that sort of stuff, but also feeling stressed all of the time just because I wasn't sleeping. It wasn't that I wasn't getting the other parts of my life right, but the lack of sleep. And then talking to my clients about it, it was clear that people were sort of cutting sleep short. Well, even teenagers, my big sort of bugbear, if you like, is that we start teenage school days too early. The teenage sleep clock moves by 2 hours. They become super night owls. And one of my big bugbears is that we literally get teenagers to wake up before they should do. So I go into schools free of charge, as well as going into corporate companies to sort of talk sleep hygiene. I go into schools and lecture about sleep.
Yeah, I didn't know that about teenagers and that age and the sleep clock and that's really interesting. Yeah, so interesting. And so what I'm really interested in with sleep and what you were just describing is stress and time of day is what, like I always have when we're delivering well-being sessions, sleep comes up, and whenever I ask the question to a client, how's your sleep? The answer is never amazing. I get a great night's sleep. So from your point of view, what comes first? Is it sleep or is it well-being and what we're doing during our waking hours in the day? What's the relationship like between that? And if someone's struggling with sleep, what should they be thinking about?
What's cited for giving you poor sleep is normally work-related stress or finance worries. So certainly we lead a more stressful life. We lead a more 24/7 life. When you track reduction in sleep, it actually starts when we started late night TV. Back in the UK, TV used to finish at 10:30 in the 60s. Then we extended it. People stayed up later. Then we extended it again. People stayed up later. Then you add mobile phones. You've got technology that you can take to bed. And we do that. The people who sleep worse are always the people who take their mobile phone into their bed, and it just keeps them awake. We doom scroll, we binge watch, and it just keeps us up later and later and later. Then you've got the genuine increased stress of modern living. We've got a 24/7 culture. We work harder, we work longer, and then people feel like they're time deprived. So you come home, you come home late, you have your meal, and then you want some me time, and the me time creeps into sleep time. Particularly for women within partnerships that have got children, they tend to be the primary carer. So it tends to be that we will cut our sleep short to feel like we've had a proper day. And obviously, if you've been stressed, if you've got deadlines at work, they tend to overhang. 42% of people say that they find it really hard to sleep, to switch off from work at night.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely feel that. That's really interesting what you said about that concept of me time, because all day, especially if you're a parent, you're waking up in the morning, getting the kids ready, then you're going to work. And the nature of our work now, I think, especially in this age of AI, which is a topic that I want to dig into with you on a little bit later, but our day is just back to back to back to back. And then that point when, okay, it's bedtime, I felt myself just, scrolling or delaying my bedtime. And so for the last few years, I haven't slept with my phone in the bedroom. My phone stays in the kitchen. And that's now a habit that when I travel, it's actually really difficult, because if I'm in a hotel room, I revert straight back. I'm there on my phone. It's so addictive. But having that separation of another room really helps me. But what else? What else have you found that can help people in this modern life where work and life are always on? How can we find good sleep hygiene?
I think what happens is that when you look at the prehistoric animal that we are, our physiology is still the same as we would have been in cave times. We used to put sleep first and wake second. We didn't have control of the environment. When it got dark, we would go into the cave. When it got too cold, we'd go to sleep. Our body temperature is designed to drop at night in line with the decrease in body temperature of the temperature of the world. So we have this innate reboot at night, physically and mentally, that's generated via sleep. And we're the only animal that consciously deprives ourselves of that. So what we do is we put sleep second and wake first. We should have done sleep first, wake second. We would have woken up when we'd had enough sleep. So the only way around it is actually to have a stop sign in your sort of evening that says, okay, now I'm in my sleep preparation zone. So you literally do things that are going to help you get to sleep, rather than try and sort of flick a light switch. We think that we're going to do that and fall asleep. We're not. We need to sort of encourage the brain to go from being the beta wave of being attention focused to the alpha wave of relaxation. So we have to put things in that sort of sleep hygiene part before we go to bed, which would include turning off mobile phones.
I love that idea of a stop sign to give us time to wind down for sleep. How many hours before our ideal falling asleep time do you recommend that we start that stop sign, that wind down?
If you're looking at the purest sleep sort of studies, you'd say 2 hours. Most people would be able to get away with 1 hour. 30 minutes would be the absolute minimum, but I would try for an hour. It doesn't mean you can't watch TV. We would have said sort of 20, 30 years ago that TV would have been stimulating. We know that soporific TV is okay. It doesn't emit the blue light that you get from technology screens in the same way. Part of the problem of mobile phones is that not only do we take them to bed, but they emit blue light. So if you don't put the sort of filters on, that blue light simulates the blue light of the sun in the day, and it blocks the production of melatonin, which is the hormone that gives us the impulse or the desire for sleep.
Oh, okay. And what do you mean? What's soporific? When it comes to TV, what does that mean?
But boring TV that isn't a documentary or a stimulating program. TV that you use to relax to, and try not to binge watch, because the thing with binge watching is there's another episode and you're sort of prone to keep going.
Yeah. And I'd say we're kind of up against it with these companies like Netflix, TikTok who have experts working for them, and they spend a lot of money making their platforms addictive so that you are going to press play on the next show, so that it is going to surface something that's of interest to you, and you're going to get that kick of dopamine. So, like, TV as a way to wind down, I can see what you mean if we're very able to be very, what's the word, like controlled or very disciplined with our use of it. But yeah, what are some other ways, if it wasn't TV, that you would suggest people start to wind down after that stop sign?
And the best biohack is to have a bath or a warm shower. What happens is that that's not only relaxing, but it slightly heats the body up. And then as the body cools, it signals to the brain that it's getting time for bed. The planet would have cooled prehistorically. We'd have been in an environment that's cooling down, and our internal core temperature is designed to drop by 1 degree centigrade at night to 1.5. So what happens is we tend to find it harder to sleep in the hot summer humid nights than the cooler winter nights, because our body can't cool down. So that sort of having a bath, having a shower, you get out, you're relaxed, the body cools down. You do it about 30 to 45 minutes before bed, and then you have something that is relaxing, like reading a book, doing a hobby that you like, trying to get into the flow. There's a psychologist called Martin Seligman who talks a lot about the flow state, where you lose track of time and your brain is encouraged to get more into the alpha, the gamma, and the theta brain waves, which are the ones that we need to relax and get to sleep.
Wow. Yeah, so interesting. What the only other thing that I'd add to what you said, because I think those are all really good points, is also the breath.
Absolutely.
So what's been transformative for me and some of our clients is having a very short, it can literally be a couple of minutes, and you can do it while lying in bed. Just a 4-7-8, inhaling for 4, holding for 7, exhaling for 8 breath. Just a few rounds of that, and God, I'm asleep.
I like progressive muscle relaxation as well, where you squeeze the body as you breathe in and then you let go as you breathe out, and you sort of hold the breath and you try to breathe out longer than you breathe in. When you breathe out longer than you breathe in, it slows the heart rate down.
Wow, yeah. Yeah, longer the exhale, and yeah, that progressive muscle relaxation. So if someone wanted to try that, how would they do that?
The technique starts with your toes. So you squeeze your toes as tightly as you can when you breathe in. So try and breathe in for 4 or 5 seconds. Then you hold, and then you breathe out for 6 or 7 seconds. Then you go to the calves. Then you go to the knees. As you breathe in, squeeze. As you breathe out, let go. And you go all the way up. So to your gluteal muscles in the buttocks, to your belly, to the shoulders, to the hands, to your face, to your eyes. There's another way of doing it called the military technique, where they have an idea of doing it from the head downwards, and you have a visualization as well. And you say to yourself, you look at a way of getting to sleep by having a relaxing visualization, squeezing and letting go. That's from the head down. It's called the military technique. But I like progressive muscle relaxation. Tends to work really well for young children too.
Wow, yeah, that's really good. I've not tried that one before. I'm going to give that a go tonight.
Great.
So switching gears a little bit, you've worked with some really large organizations in helping their employees reduce stress, sleep better for a number of years now. So I'd love to know, what have you been seeing in the corporate well-being space lately? And how's that been changing over the last couple of years?
We're much more a population that's under stress, both in terms of the way the world is these days, but also in terms of the demands at work. From a sort of 10 years ago, I'd have been talking just about sleep. I'd been talking then about sleep and stress and time management. Now mental health comes into it. So a lot of companies are doing a lot more work on trying to identify when people are getting close to burnout. They are got mental health advocates. They've got ways of tracking people in a different way and supporting them, both in work and with courses and sort of with the hybrid working. There's been a lot of emphasis on helping people manage themselves with hybrid working. So courses online, stuff like that, helping them with the workstation. You know, when you look at hybrid working, it's quite difficult because sometimes it feels like you're living at work. So some of the ideas that I share with people is to try and make the room that you're in look different, particularly if you're working from your bedroom or a place where you would relax, like a lounge. Try and make the props of that different. Put different things on the table, make your brain think that this is a work And then when you put it away, you put different props on. So your brain goes, okay, that's rest. Have a commute, go out in the morning, break the time between your home and your work, have a commute, go outside, get a coffee, come back in, start work, change your clothes, have a commute in the evening where you do a wind down. So try and create breaks in the day as well to relax, to switch off. Make sure you got healthy food in the fridge. We tend to find that people put on weight when they're working from home. They don't eat as healthily. And take breaks in the day. Try and connect with people. Do a FaceTime rather than a phone call. Really sort of try and look after yourself and get that work-life balance correct.
Oh, those are some really good tips there because, yeah, I think in the last few years, obviously since COVID, we have seen this shift to hybrid work. Many organizations now are fully remote or have a hybrid setup. But we are now, a lot of our clients now are talking about bringing people back into the office for maybe 5 days a week. And how have you experienced that shift of now bringing people back into the office and the impact that that's having on people's well-being?
I think it varies according to the industry. Some people still have the sort of Monday and Friday off, and a lot of companies are getting people to come back in, partly because people have lost that cohesiveness. Also, it's harder to train people that are coming into the workforce. So we found, for example, that younger people definitely are reporting higher levels of stress than the older generation. They're finding it hard to get that work-life balance. They tended to be working overtime. They're trying to chase more money because it's difficult for them to get on the property ladder. That sort of encouraging people to have access to their bosses in real time, I think, is a big factor.
Yeah, I think especially hard for those younger generations because I think back to my early days of work and those relationships that were built organically in the kitchen over making a cup of tea or in maybe going to the pub on a Friday night after work. A lot of learning actually was done just via osmosis in those environments, watching how leaders carried themselves, how they interacted, how they spoke. And yeah, a lot of that now, I think that's why we're seeing this shift of companies wanting to bring people back into the office, not only because, working fully remotely, as you outlined, has all of these challenges to our mental and physical health when we are just sat in our bedroom or living room all day, but also for our career progression, for actually that dissemination of knowledge.
There's a sort of balance in terms of a lot of the clients that I work with say, I love the flexibility because I can do my chores, I can get a delivery, I can sort of duck and dive. But I think also that sort of cohesiveness, the having meetings in person. What I found particularly during lockdown was people were having back-to-back 1 hour meetings on Zoom with no breaks. Absolutely the wrong thing to do. And I was advising people to either start the meeting at 10 past the hour or finish it at 10 to the hour.
Yeah, exactly. Super smart. And I know Google Calendar and a lot of the other platforms now have a setting where you can do this automatically. You can have meetings start and end. So at least you're getting that buffer just to move the body as well. Yeah, it's fascinating. So, and with HR, I think HR as a discipline has changed quite a lot. HR and people. Where do you see HR leaders getting it right, and where do you see that they might still be missing the mark with their approach to well-being?
I think when they get it right, they're looking at it more holistically. They're trying to give people support outside of work and inside of works. Things like financial planning coming into it. A lot of people struggle with financial pressure, life balance tips, how to manage time. Just, getting into the whole what you do in the day, what you do to relax, being more holistic in terms of some of the companies are helping people with fitness trackers. So they're coming up with recommendations on how much exercise to do, what to eat. So being more holistic is certainly where the companies are getting it right, for sure.
Yeah, super important, that holistic approach. And especially today, right? A lot of companies have been speaking about AI and how do we roll out AI, and a couple of organizations that we've worked with at I Am Pausing, they are talking to me about this intensive rollout that they're having all of their staff go through right now, with training courses and goals and benchmarks that they have to hit for adoption for different tools within their work. And how do you see this adoption of AI interacting with what we're talking about here in terms of people's well-being?
I think if as long as you're making the time for human contact. I think, we're a social animal. I think as long as you're making time to move, as a hunter gatherer, we'd have walked about 9 miles a day. The body is meant to move. The brain works better when you move. You get neurotropic factor when you move. You get more dopamine when you move. Having proper breaks, allowing people to get up, get out of their desks, and having proper human interaction. So the AI is an addition to communication, not instead of communication. I think also for a lot of people, AI is quite a threat because companies are using it as a way of reducing headcount rather than a way of expanding businesses. So I think people are concerned about it in terms of how safe's my job. And I think, when companies keep that in mind, in terms of allowing people to increase the range of things that they're doing rather than just do what they're doing in a quicker way. I think when companies ask their employees to think about how to use AI creatively, you're probably going to get a better interaction than, just do your current job quicker or cover somebody else's work with AI as well as yourself. So don't take an assistant on. Certainly what I'm seeing when I'm having anecdotal conversations is there's a big reduction in the amount of graduates that are getting pulled in because people can use AI to do that job rather than brief out things to what would have been an assistant's role.
Yeah, it's crazy how quickly things are changing at the moment. I went to an event earlier this week which was on AI and sales, and one of the biggest takeaways from that event for me was, firstly, before rolling out AI, let's look at the process overall to map this working process. So if you're in sales, it would be the customer journey from the lead finding your website, making contact with you, and going through that sales process. Let's map that out first, and then we can layer AI and data enrichment on top of that. But what's actually becoming even more valuable than before is human skills like empathy and trust, because sales has always been a discipline which is about people. It's about being able to look someone in the eye and feel like I trust you, and so I'm going to partner with you over the course of the next years for this specific business challenge that I have. But but they gave this really interesting example of, if you have salespeople sat like this on a video call all day, they can be using AI to help them on those calls as a coach. These are the type of questions to ask. These are the type of responses. But what happens then when that salesperson goes to a conference, meets someone in real life, sits across from someone at a lunch meeting and doesn't have their AI here to help them answer those questions? We need to also train and develop and place importance on these emotional intelligence skills as well as just the automation.
I think getting the blend right is difficult. When you're looking at the pressure that all businesses have now to be more cost efficient, I think there's a need to use AI just because you're in a competitive market, and certainly some of the insights it can give you are tremendous. But I think also getting that human balance right is the key to keeping employees on board, being aware that it's an addition to the job rather than a substitution.
Yeah, exactly. And are you seeing a difference across generations in the workplace when it comes to sleep and well-being and these challenges that we've talked about?
I'm finding that the 18 to 24-year-old age bracket are being labeled as being non-resilient and not fit for purpose. I think that's a real worry that more and more conversations I have with people that I coach is that, the graduates that are coming into the market crack up. They don't know how to cope. They're not resilient. And I think, we need to sort of look at how are we training teenagers? What are we giving them in terms of resources? And really sort of looking at that onboarding in a lot more depth, if you like. I think it's a challenging world for younger people. They can't get on the housing market. Things are expensive. Going out, entertainment is more and more expensive. And I think they're showing more signs of burnout. And I think the relationship between the younger employee and their boss is more and more important. That trust, that sort of coaching to sort of asking them how they're feeling, what's the pressure like, how can I help? That sort of trying to encourage them to grow as much as getting the job right, how to balance that work-life balance, and how do you cope with stress as a youngster, because you've not been under that stress in that way before. One of the anecdotes is that young kids don't go out and get jobs now. Back in the day, I'm a bit of a dinosaur, but back in my day, you'd get a job. You'd do a job before you went to university. Some of the kids obviously are funding themselves through jobs, but that sort of post round, the sort of working in the post office at Christmas, doing some bar work, working in a cafe. There's less and less of that going on. So kids don't know how to work. There's also a sort of sense from some of my clients that we got used to having money during furlough for not working. And there's a sort of leaning towards, definitely there's more mental health problems in work. Definitely there's more pressure. But there's a sense that some of it is like, I can take the time off because, well, I can just do it because I want to go back to that sort of cocoon of furlough. So there's some sort of overhang in some of the areas of that sort of security blanket, and not confronting the stress, not working with it, not fighting it. It's a difficult balance to get that sort of depression right, to sort of coach somebody out of it rather than just give them time off work and antidepressants. There's a real need to catch it earlier and to encourage people to still interact with work. So maybe don't take the time off. When you look at the people that taking time off work for anxiety, depression, it's about a 15-day process. So you're going out of work for 2 weeks and then you're coming back. Maybe try and have some coaching in the middle. Maybe try and get some part-time work in so that you don't literally sort of fall by the wayside. It's a difficult thing to balance, but I think, in terms of the changes, older generation are coping better than the younger generation for sure.
Yeah, gosh, that's so interesting. And what you were just saying there about then creating this, what we're seeing now in many organizations, a large bank that I was been in conversation with lately, their levels of absenteeism of employees that are signed off is higher than it's ever been. And so many of their initiatives are looking at how can we firstly prevent more people going down that route, and then how can we get this workforce back to work when many of them are signed off for reasons to do with stress. And right back at the beginning of this conversation, when I asked you, what is the cause of poor sleep and well-being, you did say, our modern life and the workplace is one of the number one drivers of this. So what do you think this is kind of like a nice natural segue into something that we've been developing together, you and I, which is Recharge, which is our flagship 6-week program for companies for sleep and well-being in general. But it covers much more than that, right? Like we've talked about how it needs to cover also time management, because we're looking at culture here, and we can't just teach well-being practices without equipping people with the tools to make space and time to do these practices in their days. So tell me a little bit about this new Recharge program that we've developed and how you think it's really helping this environment that we see in the workplace now.
I think that the pillars that we've created in terms of breath work, relaxation, stress management, sleep, and time management, I think it covers the essential pillars of health. When you look at sleep, for example, it's the biggest single cause of stress, and stress is the biggest single cause of sleep. And when you look at what happens to the body at night and the brain at night, it literally reboots. So the sort of physical process of sleep, and if you sort of shortchange yourself, you've got an increase in heart disease, increase in stroke, increase in diabetes, increase in Alzheimer's over the long term. So you've got those sorts of things to worry about. But in the short term, you tend to lose focus. Your memory doesn't work as well. So one of the studies that I looked at for students, and I always remind them of it, if you sleep less than 6 hours, 40%, up to 40% of what you have learned that day doesn't get transferred overnight from short to long term. The interesting thing is when we sleep is that it restores the cognitive parts of the brain, so that thinking part of the brain. So without sleep, you can't concentrate, you lose focus, but also you lose the dampening of your amygdala. The amygdala is the emotional center of the body. So you get an increase in cortisol when you lack sleep. Cortisol is a stress hormone. Then the next night you lack sleep again because you've got more cortisol in the sleep system. Then you lose control of your emotional center, your amygdala. Your amygdala creates your fight or flight response. So when you get into that, you've got an increase in the amygdala signals for longer. So you feel stressed, therefore you can't sleep. So you get this vicious circle. And sort of explaining that within it and how to manage time, I think is a key part. Sleep creates stress, and stress creates sleep. And it's trying to how you break that loop. Part of it is the techniques, the relaxation techniques. Part of it's time management, and part of it's sleep hygiene. So those sort of pillars all feed into each other.
Yeah, exactly. Something that you and I discussed when we were developing this program as so important as well, because we were both doing a lot of work, which was like one-off workshops, right? Coming into a company, doing an hour or 2 hour workshop on sleep, rest, whatever it may be. But what we've decided to do here is a 6-week program, which is a hybrid program that we kick off in person and then is delivered remote. And then we wrap up in person with exercises in between, which is all been developed with the latest in behavior change in mind, right? Tell me a little bit about that and your experience of how these sessions can be successful in achieving the impact they set out to or not.
I think the majority of the interaction I've had over the years in terms of corporate interaction is 1 hour workshops. So you give a recommendation, you talk about the science. So what I always do is talk about the science, then the tips, and then some practical solutions. So how do you incorporate these into your life? What you tend to then lack is, because you've sort of come in, given an education, walked away, you don't get the opportunity to check with the people who are attending. How's it working? How have you adapted? What has worked? What's not worked? So you don't have this two-way feedbacks. And having a 6-week program and adding things to somebody's repertoire as they go along, you get this better interaction. You get a development. It's a better training than just leaving somebody with the education and then not going back to check how they're getting on. So you're developing a holistic system where you're giving people tools, but also you're checking in to see how they're doing and what's working and what's not.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm really excited about it. And yeah, it's one of the other kind of something that we mentioned briefly in this conversation that I'll just pick out again is that aspect of connection, human connection, and the importance of feeling connected to our co-workers for many reasons, right? For our own well-being, for the performance of that team and the success of that business unit and the business overall. And that's also kind of played into the logic of why we designed this program to be cohort based and to have small cohorts, a team of no more than 20 people joining. It could be a leadership team, or it could be, a marketing team, a whatever team going through this together, because this getting this sense of connection is really challenging today.
It's a better coaching format than just an education. It allows that interaction and the growth and the relationship building. It's a fantastic way of encouraging people to take more care of themselves in terms of sleep and stress and work-life balance.
Yeah, exactly. Gosh, Dave, this is, I love our conversations. We could talk for hours. Um, I feel, we got to wrap this up at some point, and we have covered so much here that I think people can kind of take away and implement. To kind of wrap this up, if somebody's listening and they are feeling like they're getting on their way to burnout, that could be through lack of sleep or stress or anything else in their lives, what are some small actionable kind of, what's the most important things for them to be thinking about right now?
To work at looking at how you're going to do something to relax yourself. So trying to get some exercise for sure. Exercise is a great way of combating stress. So look at how much exercise you're doing. Look at how you can do something to encourage yourself to switch off. Learn a technique, learn meditation, learn breath work. Look at things that you know can work for you. One of my favorite hacks, if you like, was when I sort of say to people about learn to meditate, people sort of say, no, I can't meditate. So one of the hacks is think about what your next thought's going to be. 50% of people don't have a next thought. And then when you've had the next thought, put it away and have another next thought. So it's an easy in to meditation.
Oh, I love that, because there was a time in my life where sitting down to meditate felt absolutely overwhelming and scary. And I started with 2 minutes and accountability. So those were the things that helped me, setting a timer for 2 minutes and then using a habit tracking app. I love Streaks, to say, every day I'm going to sit for that 2 minutes. And then you get that dopamine boost when you check it off. And then gradually over time, now my daily meditation is 12 minutes and I can't do without it. And it's just this ingrained habit. But I love what you said about just thinking about what your next thought is, because if you even just try and sit and do that now, it's really hard. And I'm a person who has many thoughts in my mind at all times, but that's a really good way to start to meditate. So well, thank you, Dave. I think that this has been a really valuable and important conversation, and I love our chats because you are just a wealth of knowledge. I've got a closing question that I ask all guests on this podcast, and I'm very excited to hear your response to this question now. So the question is, if you could put one message about well-being on a billboard that every workplace would see, what would it say?
Take your phone to bed.
Don't take your phone to bed. Brilliant. I completely concur with that. So yes, no more explanation needed. Nice and simple on the billboard.
When I work with big corporates, sometimes we do sleep surveys, and without a shadow of a doubt, the people who get the least amount of sleep always use their phone in bed. You just can't do it. You can't rely on yourself, particularly when you go on social media. There's the impulse to stay on it for longer. It's called time displacement. And then when we get off, we've got the brain's attached to the phone. So we've got this attachment to it. We get FOMO, fear of missing out. We also know, for example, one of the things is if your phone's switched off and you're in a lecture, you will remember more than if you've got it on silent. Somehow the brain knows that this thing is still working for us. Our whole world's in it. Our whole communication's in it. And we need to take sort of digital detoxes, but certainly you need to take it at night. You need to keep your phone out of your bedroom, and particularly out of your bed. And don't use the snooze button. It just robs you of sleep.
Yes, I just love it. And I could never have done that if an ex-partner of mine years ago did not buy me an alarm clock. So everyone always has that excuse, and I had that excuse. Oh, but I need my phone to get up in the morning. You can buy an alarm clock for less than £5. And absolutely. So essential. Gosh, our phones. It's also the number often when I do a survey after an I am pausing offsite or retreat. One of the number one takeaways that people always say is, I felt so good being off my phone for a whole day. And I'm like, we have world-class experts showing you all of these advanced practices, but the number one takeaway is being off our phones. And that's something that we can all actually have within our control and power to do every day, but it's really, really hard. Phones, the number one challenge to our well-being, it seems.
Definitely.
So, well, thank you so much, Dave. And so many good, great insights. Really appreciate you coming on.
It's a real gift. Thank you. Thanks, Hannah.
Thank you.
Bye now.
Bye.